Hi, folks. I'm Jeff.
And I'm John.
And we are the
J&J
Show. And we got a special guest on tonight.
A guy from out of the country, man, out of this world.
Alberta, Canada.
Cool.
You know, we got a couple of folks that follow us on up in Canada.
Jeff Compton's one of them.
Yeah, Jeff Compton. And then John Wells all the time gets on.
All the time.
And then over by where this guy, Mike Pasman, lives is the Gates guy that is up there.
Yeah.
And he's all the time jumping on our stuff.
Talking. Yeah.
And so we're so glad. And Mike actually has a couple of shops. He's got European
and Asian.
Yeah. And it's actually called Alberta European Motorworks. And your other one is, what's your other shop called? Alberta Asian?
Oh, yeah, Alberta Asian Motorworks. You betcha.
You hit that one right on the head, buddy. I'm telling you, you got it right.
I got it right. So, Mike, kind of introduce yourself just a little, because we know that you have two shops and you're also involved with the Institute, and that's Jimmy Lee.
That's Jimmy Lee, Cecil, and Kent Bullard.
That's right.
Our buddies.
That's all.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, guys. So, I mean, I've been in the industry now for, it feels like probably close to 20 years, because I started in high school.
Young kid, 20.
Okay. I know, but I'm only 36 years old, and I've been in the industry for 20 years. So.
Yeah, that's what we call a youngster in our parts.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, I started in high school because my dad bought a shop in 2001. I started sweeping floors and emptying garbages and doing oil changes, and went up through my apprenticeship. I got my journeyman license, which up here in Canada, we actually have like a certified ticket for that.
That's cool.
That's the big deal in Canada. They don't do down here. You just can't hang up a sign and call yourself a mechanic.
No, you got to be right.
You have to go to the school, and then just like you're saying, the journeyman. And so you're actually working under a certified master tech.
Yeah. So technically speaking, at this point in my career, I am a red sealed licensed automotive service technician. So I could be that guy that has people working under me. Because I mean, in order to run a shop in Canada legally, you have to have a licensed technician on staff at all times. So I went through and did my apprenticeship through the obviously through Dad's shop, and kind of turned into working as a service advisor, and worked my way up to management. And then when we opened up a new shop, I kind of branched over there, and I manage both of them, but I'm full-time running the Asian shop, because that's sort of become my little baby to grow, because we started it with absolutely zero clientele. My first client at the Asian shop was my grandfather. He came in for an oil change.
That's cool.
So,
I like that.
Yeah.
So now your first shop that you're talking about in 2001, that's the one that y'all got that was a general repair shop.
Yeah, that's correct. So when we started that, we didn't start that one. We bought it from a guy, and it was called Express Automotive Center. We had a full-size drive-in RV lube bay. So, I mean, at one point we were doing oil changes on semi-trucks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started from working on Chevy pickups, and like I said, I've done oil changes on Peterbilts in that place. We've worked on motorhomes, and then that kind of branched into our European specialty shop. We started working on BMWs a little bit, realized that there was a niche market for it in Red Deer, and just kind of ran with it. We completely rebranded, turned it into Alberta European Motorworks. And when people would call us and say, "Hey, I got my Ford truck, can I book it in?" We got our good friends down the street that they've been doing domestic repair for 35, 40 years in Red Deer. So we say, go see the guys down the street. They'll take good care of you, because we went strictly European.
So it's great to network like that. I do a lot of that around my place too. If somebody pulled in with a European car, I'd send them to a friend of mine also.
You thought they'd lost if they pulled in your place.
You got a point, but they want me to work on their car, I'm going to send them to my friend. I love networking opportunities. That's awesome.
Now, where Red Deer is located is actually, so folks know, is between Calgary and Edmonton.
That's correct. Yeah,
Edmonton. And so you're kind of you said there's not a whole lot of places around there for the European badges.
No, that's right. I mean, we don't have a single dealership in Red Deer for anything European other than the Volkswagen dealer. Outside of that, you've got to go to Edmonton or Calgary to get any dealership level work done on your BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar, any of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, now that we've been in business for, close to, 20, 21 years now, I guess, there's a couple other shops in Red Deer now that are doing the European repairs as well, which, obviously a little competition helps us out tremendously some days. But yeah, I know it's been great. So then, we opened up our Asian shop not that long ago as well. It was a spur of the moment thing. Dad and I must have had the same dream, because we woke up the next day, showed up at the office, and we said, we should probably take over that shop next door before somebody else moves in.
Great idea.
Yeah. So we opened that one up in March of 2019 and then struggled through COVID. That was wild, trying to run a new business with no clientele and no client base through a pandemic when everybody was told to stay home and not drive their car. That was tough.
It had to be a nightmare.
And so a lot of folks don't realize, like up in Canada, because you would come down into Utah a lot for the Institute stuff, but Canada had it set up where you couldn't cross over. And if you did, then you had that 2 weeks quarantine and stuff.
Yeah, lock you up in your basement, or the government was so kind that they would give you a free hotel though for 2 weeks, so you could go lock yourself in a hotel room for 2 weeks, which to me sounded like absolutely no fun at all. So I had no desire to try to travel to the States during COVID. That was for sure.
And because some of the Canadian people that we knew couldn't come to Apex and SEMA because of the different rules and stuff that they had.
Yeah.
So I have a question, is because you were explaining how you're a Red Seal certified technician. So when y'all switched to just European, did you have to go for some more special training, or is it just that you had already been working on that stuff, or how did that part work?
Yeah. So, I mean, for the most part, when we started out early on, we just figured they were just like any other car in this world. And I mean, realistically, they are. I mean, they're definitely more complex in some areas. Some of the spots you got to put your hand in is a little tighter than working on a pickup truck. But for the most part, I mean, at the end of the day, they're still an internal combustion engine. They still do the same thing that every other car manufacturer has been doing for 100 years. But we did definitely a lot of thanks goes to WorldPack for this, honestly, because they had a lot of really good training when we first started out in the industry, in the European portion of things. And we actually made friends with these guys. The organization's called BIMMers, and it's an independent group of BMW repair shops. And so we really got into the mix with them and made really good friends with a lot of people in that group. Started going to their conferences, which was strictly BMW at the time. They've kind of branched out a little bit now. We're doing some Tesla stuff here and there at those conferences. Plus now they're offering management level training at those conferences. But getting involved with that group was a godsend, because they hooked us up with companies like AutoLogic so that we could get our essentially factory level scan tools for BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar, Land Rover. All the training that came along that BIMMers provided, plus all the training that WorldPack provided. We definitely early on invested a lot of money in training and specialty tools, so that we weren't just some dudes trying to work on BMWs. We were trained and actually knew what we were doing, and we didn't have to send people to the dealership, because that was the idea. We wanted to be able to give people dealer level service in Red Deer. And we could do that. We could do full dealer level programming on everything. And now it's a whole other can of worms with the way that, computer softwares are going and the firewalls and stuff they're putting up. But man, we just bought a brand new Mercedes scan tool not that long ago. That thing was like 45 grand. So that was
one of the questions I was going to ask you, is looking ahead. Our industry is changing so fast. What do you see for our future? And you just mentioned
Tesla,
scan tools, that stuff,
tools, technology, and training right there.
Yeah.
That all goes in.
So how do you see it? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, honestly, that's a real tough question to answer because, the way that the government's trying to enforce the implementation of mandatory EVs, I just don't. They keep telling us that they're going to mandate all these EVs and no more internal combustion engines, but they still fail to mention how they're going to upgrade the grids to be able to handle all this stuff. And so I just really have a hard time foreseeing all of these mandates and all these laws that they're trying to implement actually coming to fruition in the time frame that they're expecting. So, I mean, in my lifetime, am I going to see the end of the internal combustion engine? Maybe the sale of them from the dealer level, but as far as the service level on our end goes, they're never going to die. And we just have to keep advancing with the way that cars do. And like I was just saying, like the investment that we made buying that factory Mercedes-Benz scan tool. We've got a factory BMW tool, factory Mercedes, and factory Audi tool at our shop. And we can do dealer level programming for all of those tools. And there's no training from the dealerships for us to run those tools, but we still have all this great training out there in the industry to help guide us down the path. And then, we make our way through those scan tools. We figure it out. We're smart guys, but
learn that we do.
Well, that's exactly it. Right. So we've got to just keep up with the technology as best we can. And yeah, that's going to cost us a lot of money, but you know what? We've got to keep going because this is the only way that we're paying the bills. And the investment comes back tenfold because people are learning more and more that they don't have to go back to the dealerships for everything. And the joys of the internet, one quick Google search, BMW service Red Deer, and we're top on the list, right? So
yeah,
go ahead.
I heard you say several really interesting things. And number one that we're just talking about when we're talking about tools, technology, and training is you're telling that you have to put the investment in. It's going to come back, but you have to put the investment in. And that's part of the deals that so many shops have had trouble with, because we've changed from points to electronic and now we got GDI and now we got EVs coming out. And so many of the shops don't think, oh, I don't really need to invest in it, blah, blah, blah. And here we hear a shop up in Canada saying, that you got to invest in that stuff. The other thing that I thought was real interesting is because I'm kind of along the same line as when you were saying, hey, we're technicians, it's still an internal combustion engine, no matter what brand. I've dealt with some folks that they can work on one brand, but they can't work on another. And like you said, it's still the internal combustion engine. The big deal that you get into in some European stuff is you have to make the investment on some of the specialty tools. And the other part is kind of if you have a good parts supplier that'll tell you, or if you just kind of work through a couple of them, and all of a sudden the big deal on BMW is and let's see if you agree, is the emission hoses and stuff. That one's cracked. Well, if you take it loose, that one goes back to here, and then it goes across to here, and then it goes down under here. And all the places you start taking loose, they're going to break. So it's like you have to know which, okay, if I'm going to fix this part over here, I'm also going to have to buy this and this because of just their designs. And so a lot of times it's not real different. Like you said, it's still an internal combustion engine. They were doing stuff in Europe before a lot of that came over here, just like with the new AC systems.
Yeah. And that's definitely, we've had our struggles over the years for sure. Trying to, fumble your way through your first repair on a BMW, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. But it's just one of those things that we invested the money, we've invested the time, we've decided that this is what we're going to do. So we need to make sure that we're still giving our customers the best service that they can get. And yeah, that costs money, but you know what? We give the service that we give, and we're not having any real problems with it. Sometimes we run into the odd car that, we're having programming difficulties on. We just had a struggle with an Audi airbag module the other day that Audi tried to tell us we bricked, but then they we brought it up to the dealership and they cooked it too. So now it's at Audi and Germany's trying to figure out what happened to this airbag module. And I was like, okay, well, we told you guys from the get-go, we did this right. We've got your tool, we've got your stuff. Like this is not our fault. So yeah, it doesn't come without its speed bumps, but it's been rewarding for sure. I mean, we get to see a lot of fun cars in the shop. So,
and say one of the deals that some folks don't know about or haven't got into is on programming on some of those is you have to have the controlled environment. In other words, you can't be a shop down here in Texas with no AC where it's 100 degrees. Those programming has to take place in a controlled environment. And they were one of the first ones that started using the battery chargers, the battery maintainers, to keep all those systems up and alive.
A few years ago, I mean, BMW tried to come up with a way to kind of phase out the independence. And by doing this, they created when they were developing their new scan tool, you literally needed a room that was like 10 feet by 10 feet, temperature controlled. In the middle was this huge motherboard. And I think we had one or two guys. I know one guy for sure that was involved in Bimmers that actually invested the money in it. And then I think BMW actually realized, okay, this is going to cost our dealers hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement. So then they changed it. And now they're just running this stuff on a scan tool and on a laptop like everybody else is in this world. But I mean, they definitely tried to phase out the independence with that. That's for sure.
That's the big story that we hope a lot of the shops listen to and get and understand, because we have so many.
What we're doing, we're on the edge of what's taking place.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. To answer that question, I think we're now running into, especially with the EVs, companies like AutoLogic and LMV, which is a Mercedes-Benz company. They won't even help you with tech support if you don't have an EV certified technician at your shop. And so we've got guys like
you're certified.
Are you? Attaboy. See, and we've got I know that there's been some chatter about, because we've got our Bimmers conference coming up in October. There's been some chatter there about whether or not they're going to bring in a specialized EV training course for guys like us that need to be able to get that special training. And if they don't, we're definitely going to be doing some looking into seeing where we can get that certification, because we've got to keep up. I mean, we're doing a little bit of Tesla training here and there. We don't see a lot of them in Red Deer yet. The beauty about where I live, and it's similar to probably where you guys are, we're all still, for the most part, we're a bunch of rednecks. We love the oil patch.
We love rednecks.
The Alberta economy runs off of oil and gas. And so
does Texas, by the way.
Exactly. That's why we're same, right? And I mean, you look at a Tesla, for example, if you want to drive from Red Deer to the Rocky Mountains, which from Red Deer to, say, Banff, which is right in the Rocky Mountains, you're 2.5 hours. If you want to go any further, you've got to make at least one, if not two, stops to charge your Tesla on the way. So for us in Canada, because we have such a huge amount of landmass and such great distance between cities, it's just not feasible to own one unless you live in Toronto or Vancouver, and all you do is drive your car from home to work and back to home, where you plug it in again. Until they make it that these EVs will make it 1,500, 2,000, kilometers. So you guys will have to do the math there. Right. It's just, it's just not going to be feasible.
That's a ways. Down here in Texas, we call that a ways.
So
that is a ways.
Fort Worth to El Paso
10 hours.
Is 10 hours. And you're over halfway to California when you get to El Paso. Right. So from Dallas, Fort Worth to Abilene is almost 250 miles. From Dallas, Fort Worth to Austin is 160 miles. You got all this distance just like y'all do in Canada.
But we got the big highway and all the little towns.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing there is when you're talking about BMW, we were up in Chicago, which is down from y'all, at the iCar headquarters. And they had the BMW guys were there.
Yeah.
They brought in that old fancy looking car and everybody was wanting to sit in it and check it out on the EVs. And so iCar was working with BMW on developing a program for the Beamers, and because it was just their group, and there was another group in there when we were in there, and so that might be one source that you look at is iCar, as far as being able to get some training and stuff. And then there was another guy, Dr. Mark Quantro, and he was up north, and we just found out he's down here in Midlothian, which is
right here.
And we're out in the kind of the sticks a little, but it was like, oh my gosh, he came down here, and he does a lot of the training. He goes out all around. And then Dirk Fuchs, which was with iCar, and he's a huge EV guy. In fact, his background is coming from Europe. He was in Germany, and he actually just branched out on his own, and he's doing some training and some different deals. He's like one of the top guys in the industry because he was with ZF, and they were developing the electric transmissions and stuff, that were in the Porsches and the other cars, which is, right up your alley. So there's a lot of guys out there. The big deal about all this is now we get background on your shops and how your philosophy is about investing and training and the tools technology, which is our big deal that we're trying to share with everybody. Is now you kind of jumped a little bit, and pre-COVID, you all started working with the Institute with your buddies Cecil and Kent. And so tell us a little bit about that, because we're talking about you investing in your shop and about your business and all of that, but you're real big in trying to help other shop owners now, trying to help others see how you should have a vision, how you should have goals.
And that's referring to the training part of what we do.
Yeah.
Is helping other shops see what we see. And I'm talking to you, Mike, and what I see in our industry and what's going on.
And so tell us a little bit about that, how you got involved in that, and then COVID kind of shut you down a little bit.
But you survived.
So I mean, well, we survived, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I've known Cecil for, oh man, it's probably been at least 10, 12 years, I want to say. And I've always been really inspired by what he does. I've always really looked up to him. I think what he does for the industry is amazing. I mean, he's got a long background in the industry, not just with the training side of things, but actually running a shop and managing shops and helping them to grow and become amazing automotive shops. And then when he branched into the training world, going through WorldPack and being involved with their business smart groups, and also obviously that taking training at the expos and at BIMers and things like that, I kind of built a relationship with him. And like I said, he's definitely one of my mentors in this industry for sure. And one day I just was talking to my wife, and I was like, you know what, I think it'd be awesome if I could work with Cecil. And she goes, Mike, I've always said that I think you'd make a great trainer. I think you'd do really good with something like that. So she goes, why don't you send him an email? What's the worst that can happen? So I sent him an email and I said, hey, Cecil, I said, really love what you do. I said, I think you're amazing for this industry. I'm always inspired by you. I said, I'd love to get the opportunity to come and work for you one day. And he goes, yeah, you know what, Mike, we're actually in the process of firing up an advisor training program. And once we get that launched, I think you'd be a great fit. So we launched the Advisor Mastery Program with the Institute. Like I said, I want to say it was 2019, 2020. We ran it for a little bit, and then COVID hit. So that shut down everybody's ability to travel down to Utah and actually do the in-person training, which was one of the main focuses of the Advisor Mastery Program. And so we kind of, that kind of dwindled for a little bit. And then through COVID and Cecil buying his new building and getting all that going, and then all of a sudden acquiring RLO and the expansion that happened with that, all of a sudden we brought in all this extra clientele. We brought in all the trainers that came with RLO, and then we really launched the Advisor Performance Group. And I'd been hassling Kent literally every 3 or 4 months, just sending him an email. Hey, Kent, just want to make sure you haven't forgotten about me. Still want to come work for you guys. And so, yeah, I guess in January of 23. So just recently, they brought me back on board. And so now I'm working directly under Mark Sewell. He's our head coach for the Advisor Performance Group. Excuse me.
I've talked to Mark before. A great
guy.
Yeah,
Mark's a great guy. And he's also got a long list of experience in this industry as far as managing shops and running shops and things like that. And so now I'm training. I think I've got 7 advisors that I'm training right now, bringing on an 8th right away. We've got 30 or 40 advisors in our performance group.
awesome.
And so no, it's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to kind of expanding that portion of my career as well. I'm getting to the point where my shops run really well. So I don't necessarily need to be there all the time. And so I want to get to a point where I can start doing more in-person conferences and training and things like that with the Institute.
I'm in that same position, Mike, in my world. Yeah,
right. So I think that's my story in a nutshell with the Institute. I mean, I love working with Kent and Cecil.
So if a young person was wanting to get into our industry, open his own shop, go to work, what kind of advice would you give him, her? I use that loosely. It's not gender specific as far as give him, so what kind of advice would you give that young person coming into our industry to open up an automotive repair shop?
I think you've got to spend time in the industry before you run out and open up your own shop. And that, I mean, working for somebody else, learning how things operate. Obviously, you need to absolutely must have a very solid background in the repair side of things, because, running a shop is, anybody could probably run a business. And you could probably, if you had a business background, you could probably roll in and run an automotive shop. But knowing the ins and outs of the industry, I think, is crucial. So, if you're 25 years old or 30 years old and you just want to run out and go open up an automotive shop, I think you've got a long, bumpy road ahead of you. But if you've been in the industry for 10, 15 years, you've been working in a shop, whether that's dealer level, plus you've done some independent stuff, it's a huge investment, but you also need to make sure that you invest in the training. I've watched so many automotive shops being involved with the Institute that have turned their life around, getting involved with business groups and other peers in the industry that help hold them accountable, help them understand profit margins and labor margins and productivity. And there's so much that goes on the day-to-day that if you don't understand how those things operate, there is no way that business is going to survive for you.
And you learned that stuff from Kent and Cecil?
And his dad.
Well, I was going to say, definitely from Dad, but I learned a lot from Cecil. I mean, Kent and I we're about the same age. He's probably younger than I am, but so even watching him develop into the person that he is now from the first time that I met him, it is remarkable. So
huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Cecil is a wealth of knowledge, and the people that he has employed with him and the connections that he's made in the industry, it's invaluable, really. And so if you don't invest in yourself and invest in the training that's required to run a shop, then you're just going to be like every other guy that thinks he can run a business, every other guy that thinks he can run an automotive shop. And I think the most important thing that I've learned from all the training and being involved with Cecil is we need to change the bad name that the automotive world has. I mean, everybody thinks that mechanics, we're going to use that word for this particular example, are just out to steal your money, and they're not going to fix your car, and they're just all these greasy dudes that are going to slap some brake pads in your car and send you down the road. And we really need to change that mindset. And I think by getting the training and getting involved in smart groups and getting involved in groups that are just all other automotive shops and other automotive shop owners helps you to really I don't know, hone
Come
in
out from
that
among
skill.
them.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We want to make sure that we can all make a living wage and we can all pay our
Yes.
bills and our employees can all make a living wage. And by getting involved in this and doing the training and getting involved in these groups, we can get everybody on the same page so that we're not battling to be the cheapest shop in town.
Amen. I like it. You're right on my soapbox with me. You're saying all the right things. Just gives me goosebumps. I love it, because I'm really huge in training. I'm really huge in believing our industry is not as bad as what everybody portrays it to be. Okay. I believe we have that bad apple, maybe 2 of them in this bushel. Okay. But the majority of people in the automotive industry are your uncles, your aunt, your grandpas. All of us are in this industry. We're not here to rip people off. We're here to make a living and support our family. That's why we're an independent shop, And the 1 or 2 guys that give us the bad eye really can outshine everybody if we allow them to. But if we bring up our standard, get involved with our industry, let our people know we're involved with the industry, we will outshine them and they'll get pushed down and pushed out. That is my belief.
So see, I'm hearing a couple things is, when you're doing your teaching and stuff, are you teaching in Canada or are you teaching down here in the States?
No, so I mean, all of my advisor training is all on Zoom meetings. I meet with my advisors every 2 weeks. We spend about 30, 45 minutes on a Zoom call. Most, if not all of our shops that we have involved in the advisor performance group, they all have audio, like a call recording, so we can listen to phone calls. We can dissect how the advisors are doing through that. But then on the flip side, I'm actually heading to Utah on Thursday because we are still doing quarterly advisor meetings. So if you're involved in the advisor performance group, all of that training is included in your monthly fees. All you got to do is get your advisor down to Utah, put them up in a hotel for the weekend. We feed them, we do all the training. So, I mean, this weekend, I'm going to maybe do a little bit. For the most part, Mark Sewell runs the advisor performance training portion of things. But like I said, trying to dip my toes into that a little bit more. So I'm definitely up at the front of the class and helping Mark out and putting my 2 cents in here and there. But for the most part, yeah, all my stuff is all on Zoom, which is, I will say, the one good thing that did come out of COVID was everybody's realization that we don't always need to be in the same room together to learn a lot of cool stuff.
Amen.
Because the difference there is, like you said, up in Canada, you have to go through the journeyman and the training and all of that. And what happens with so many shops is where you're saying, you believe that the technician should have a thorough understanding of the working on the cars and then understand business. Is what happens is so many times is these technicians are at a dealership that they get taken advantage of, or they're at an independent and they're like, oh my gosh, the boss has all these new toys and I'm working till 6:30. I'm working weekends. I don't get to go see my child's hockey game. And I can open my own shop, not having a clue about the business part.
And Dad and Mom bought a shop with zero idea how to run a business. They'd never owned one. They were both employees their entire life. And then we walked in, turned the key and went, okay, now what? And, and that was early 2000s where, this stuff like this wasn't available. The amount of training that's out there now was definitely not available. The business management side of things, training for that was, there was 20 groups back then, but it wasn't nearly to the extent and the depth that goes into business ownership and training now. So I just had to go back on that for a second, because I mean, it happens. I lived it. I mean, my dad,
yes, sir.
It took him a long time before he actually started making good, actual legit money to enjoy his life and do the fun things that he wants to do. And now he's at that point where, I mean, COVID really sucked a lot of cash out of the company, but he was at a place where he could keep that business afloat because we had made some money and he had put it away and invested it properly. And so we could keep the company going. And without organizations like the smart groups that we had through WorldPack and guys like Cecil, had we not had that training and had we not done all the investments in ourselves, I don't think we would have survived COVID, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to. I know a lot of people that just faded away because they didn't have a coach, they didn't have the training, they didn't have the business skills to survive.
Well, and it was a little different in Canada and there was some cities and some states and down here that they were telling you, stay home, don't drive. We actually did more the years of COVID than we had done the years before because they were working out of their homes. And so they were like, hey, I've been putting off getting this maintenance done because I need it in my car every day. I don't need it every day. So if you need to do these bigger jobs, they take several days. We were picking all of those up. And so it was, it was different for us than it was for a lot of ones. And the fleets, because, down here, they deemed everything, we were essential business. And so it's like, but there was still a lot that, had to take the loans, had to take the help because, they're supporting all these people. And so that's a big part that a lot of people don't see, a lot of shop owners don't see, a lot of people don't understand that part of being a small business owner.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to invest in ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing. And there's, I think the most important thing that you can gain from going to these conferences is meeting other people in the industry.
We talked about that networking.
Networking is huge. And like I said, without people like the Bimmers organization, when we first started in our European world, I don't know how well we would have done carrying on being a European specialty shop. But the networking that came out of the Bimmers world and going to these different conferences and different expos is massive. I mean, I still talk to, I talk to so many people I meet at these conferences that the only place I ever see them is when we go to the conferences. But man, if I got a troubled car or if I got a problem with something or whatever, I can pick up the phone, give them a call. And it's like I saw him yesterday and we figure out exactly the issues that we're having. And
they call us too.
Yeah, well, exactly, right?
They network with us. And that's the whole idea, just networking back and forth. And like you said, and I say it 100 times over again, you've got to go to these conferences to meet the top-notch people. And if you're top-notch, you got to be involved with top-notch people. The best, the cream of the crop.
Investing in yourself, investing in your company, investing in your people who work for you is going to do nothing but advance your business and give yourself the freedom to do the things you want because you're giving yourself more opportunity to make some more money.
So the Mars conference is coming up September the 7th and the 9th. And there's going to be some big talkers there.
Yeah, and that's the whole deal is it doesn't matter how many of these you put on or how many training events or how many deals WorldPack or anybody does if the folks don't show up.
Amen.
And so we're so glad that we got Mike on here to share how important it is to get the different types of training,
to be educated,
get the education, to network. And that's the big
deal
that we talk about is that's the biggest reason. John had never been to SEMA and Apex until just a couple of years ago. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God.
Eye opener. Great experience.
Because of all the networking. When you walk down the aisles and people see you and they holler or they walk up and we introduce, this is John Firm. And they're like, oh, nice to meet you. Otherwise known as Buckaroo Bob. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that's you. And so, well, I've been knowing you for a long time. And that's a big part of it. And so, Mike, it's so nice to hear you talk about that, to hear you say that, and to hear you share your experiences about going from a general repair shop to a specialty shop with just European.
That's a great story.
And then going to Asian
the industry is a fun place to be. And I just think we got to encourage everybody to just keep bettering yourself.
Oh, what a mess.
Well, Mike, we appreciate so much. I think we got the point across on hearing you say about, investing in yourself, investing in your shop. It's the same things that we say, but we appreciate so much you taking the time and showing